For more on the role of the co-pilot and a closer look at this latest air catastrophe, which is now, by the way, a criminal investigation, let's go to Aviation Security Analyst Mike Boyd. Mike, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
So one of the things we've learned from all these news conferences is that the co-pilot reprogrammed the autopilot, resetting it from cruising altitude to 100 feet. How do they know that when the second black box has not even been found yet?
That's an excellent question. It came from an outside source, I think called Flight 24, that claims they monitor these things. I'm not so sure I buy that. We're painting this guy as a murderer. There is no indication he could have passed out on the airplane. We don't know that. They say that he had normal breathing. I don't even know if we know that or not. So the real issue here is we don't really know what went on in that cockpit after the captain left. We don't know right now. The black box might tell us more.
Well, but we do know that the captain was knocking on that door and he did not open that door.
That's very correct. Now, what that means is the security system worked in that the door has to be something that the crew doesn't want to open it, they don't open it. The problem was the crazy person was on the wrong side of the door at this point in time. But the question comes up, was this man conscious? Was he intentionally doing this? You look back at his background that we know so far, there's no indication of this man having any really strange behavior. So there's a lot of questions here that aren't answered yet.
Well, before we talk to him some more, I want you to explain this locking mechanism on the cockpit door. Shouldn't there be some way for the captain of the airplane, when they need to use the restroom and the door locks, they should be able to get back in there?
In this case, absolutely not. The reason being is if there's a way of getting in from the cabin into the cockpit, a terrorist could force someone to do that. That's the way it has to work, where whoever is in the cockpit of the airplane, managing that airplane, has to have the ability to say, no one's coming in here. And that's the world we live in. But if you have anything on the other side, the passenger side, that would allow someone to get into that cockpit, we don't have cockpit security.
So, Mike, if this had been a U.S. airline, a second person, probably a flight attendant, would have been in that cockpit when the captain goes to use the restroom. Should this rule be universal with every country?
Well, I think it's going universal now, judging what other carriers have done. But let's not put that in the wrong context. If someone really wants to bring an airplane down and there's a flight attendant sitting in the left seat waiting for the captain to come back, what we'd probably have is just one more fatality in the cockpit on the airplane. So the reality is this helps, it's good, but it's not something that's going to explain why a otherwise normal person went bonkers today or yesterday.
So speaking of the person going bonkers, let's talk about the mental state of pilots. From what I understand, they don't have to go through any kind of psychological or mental evaluation. They go to regular physicals, then they're asked how they're feeling, and if the doctor finds something suspicious, then they recommend something. Is that true?
It is, but keep in mind, too, pilots are always going under rigorous training in simulators, with check rides, with check pilots on top of them. And in the pilot profession, if there's a problem with a pilot, it's normally another pilot will drop the dime on him, as we say here, and call him out on it. So there are some safeguards there. But even if you do a psychological evaluation, 3 months later, the guy might lose his girlfriend, might lose his mother, might be diagnosed with a disease and become manic depressive. Those things can happen.
And we don't know if this guy, if it was premeditated or if it was something that just snapped while he was in the cockpit.
That's what it looks like. There's just a lot of unanswered questions here. But we know this, the cockpit security worked right. The only problem was the wrong person was in the cockpit.
Let's talk about his hours of flight time, 630 hours, and he was behind a major commercial plane. Are 630 hours, does that seem like a lot of training or flying time to you?
Well, in this case, because we're looking at aberrant behavior, I don't think the number of hours makes that much difference. But, you know, there's a lot of talk about that. Where the U.S. is 1,500 hours. That 1,500-hour rule should have been changed where the captain had more hours. But nevertheless, the point of it is, if Lufthansa says that man was capable of flying the airplane and was safe, I'm taking that one to the bank. He was.
And that's exactly what they're saying until we find out more. All right, thank you so much, Mike Boyd. We certainly appreciate your time.